Okay, here we go. We're gonna go in 3, 2, and 1. Hey everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Martucci. We are here on July 7th. This is like the latest we've ever done a wrap up this deep into the month. We do it first and third Wednesdays. Just so happens the first Wednesday of the month is the 7th. So we're going to talk about June here, but we'll chat a little bit about 4th of July weekend as well. Join with me as we do every month at the top of the month, New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson, who just came off a vacation to one of the hottest places in the world a couple of weeks ago. He was just in the Pacific Northwest. So welcome back home.
It's good to be back, but Pacific Northwest has to be on your bucket list.
I know. You told me that off camera. You said I had to go. And I said, nothing really like interests me there, but I could be wrong. I'm sure I am. But you were there, just real quick. You were there during the massive record-breaking heat wave. You were mostly at elevation, so you escaped, the worst of it. But just tell us what it was like being there during that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, well, it truly was tragic out there. Both in British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon, there were a number of excess deaths that still aren't understood. So let's put it in that context. This just obliterated past records. The closer you were to lower elevation and away from the immediate coast, the hotter you were. Places like Seattle and Portland and inland up in the Dalles, up the Columbia River Valley, where temperatures were 110, 117 degrees, up in Lytton, British Columbia, 121 degrees. And then the next day, a brush fire essentially destroyed the town. Just horrific. I mean, this is like apocalyptic in some respects. It was shattering all-time records by 10 degrees. We were up at 3,500 feet in Bend, Oregon. It was 109 degrees. That broke their all-time record that went back 105 years, broke it by 5 degrees. The previous day, they had broken it by 4 degrees. The next day, it was only 102. It was 2 degrees off the record. It was cool. Now, I might add, though, I know what was happening back in Jersey, and you were dealing with a lot of heat and humidity.
We were.
And the discomfort index got well above 100. Now in Bend, when it was 109 degrees, the relative humidity was 7%, and the field temperature was 102. It was actually cooler than the temperature. So you weren't feeling that much cooler here in New Jersey when it came to discomfort because of the humidity levels.
Right. It's a great example of it's not the heat, it's the humidity. I hear so much here. Of course, it can also work the other way because, if it was 116 degrees in Vegas, I always tell people, I said, listen, 116 in Vegas is still freaking hot. It doesn't matter what the humidity could be 0.1%. It's still hot.
I mean, there's this famous postcard where there's a skeleton in the desert and underneath it says, but it's a dry heat. Right. But these numbers were just astronomical, and it was affecting vegetation. We saw impacts on vegetation when we went into the Willamette Valley for a day where it had been 110 degrees. We're talking temperatures 30 degrees or more above normal, which is, here that would be like 120 because we average upper 80s during July. It would be like being 115 plus. Plus, there's very dry out there, of course, which exacerbates the heat. But I was telling you off camera, we were hiking up to 9,000 feet. We were at 8,000 feet 2 days where it was in, only the 80s. We were hiking around a lake at 6,000 feet elevation.
Yeah.
It was 90 degrees when we pulled into this dirt parking lot. And as we're hiking around the lake in the shade, there's still some natural snow.
What? So I can't listen. You're telling me you made a snowball. I can't even imagine that.
At 90 degrees. And now in the shade, it probably was only 85 degrees. I don't know. But it was just a remarkable event for that area. And I'd say really tragic in some respects, too. Something they had, frankly, never experienced before.
Sure.
Both the severity of the heat, and it was 3 days, and inland, it's still going on. Bend is still, I'm looking, there's still 10, 15 degrees above normal. And mind you, at the same time it was happening out there, there was a massive heat wave in Europe and Western Asia. Moscow was setting records, and Helsinki was setting records. So we're cooking, and the heat dome, if you will, is coming back, building back in the West over the next couple of days. So I'll tell you, it's and I just read a preliminary study earlier this morning out of a group in Europe that proceeds. They usually are a couple of days ahead of NOAA in issuing their synopsis for the previous month. They say they're claiming North America was record warm June. So stay tuned for that to get a little bit more press. I think globally, fourth warmest June. The three above it were all in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So the planet's cooking, folks. It's we're seeing it in summer, and it's worrisome for a number of areas of the globe.
I want to ask you two questions about this, then we'll jump into New Jersey. First question is, is it fair to attribute a percentage of this to human-induced climate change? But then two, on a slightly lighter note, in British Columbia, they broke the Canadian all-time record 3 days in a row. Just how incredible is that? Like, is that one of the most incredible weather feats in recorded history? Like, or, it might even be the most incredible weather feat. I'm not sure. It's just crazy.
That's a great point, Joe, because, an all-time record is unusual. And they shattered the all-time Canadian record, which I can't remember. It was 110. It was above 110. It was out on the prairie. And here you were in a valley, a very well-known warm spot, an inland valley with downsloping, and it's been very dry there.
Yeah.
So it's not unusual that it happened in Layton, but the magnitude of it was astounding. I mean, their all-time record high now exceeds the all-time record high of Las Vegas. It was. How
about that? A little food for thought for everybody.
The warmest on record globally, north of 45 degrees latitude, which bisects Oregon 45 degrees. So you're up in Layton, it's even higher. So if you're a weather geek, a record geek, this one was one of the all-time greatest weather records. I think.
I was explaining to people, I said, it's like, Will Chamberlain scored 100 points in a basketball game. Well, it would be like if he scored 101 the next day, then 102 the day after. Like you would still be talking about it. So, I don't know if climate records are as popular as basketball, but this is something I think if you like weather or you're interested in weather, you could talk about this for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It was truly that extraordinary. Now, in terms of the climate change aspect to it, there are actually some papers I've heard are going to come out very quickly on attribution studies. This is a burgeoning area of climate research. Goes back 10, 15 years, sophisticated mathematics, and they look for attribution. Each year, the American Meteorological Society publishes something that looks at the previous year's extremes and tries to attribute them to natural causes, to anthropogenic, human-induced causes, and even look at percentages of such. And so I can't say yet with great certainty, but I can say with next to great certainty, they're going to find that both the extreme nature of the temperature and perhaps even the duration. So we're talking about two things, the extreme temperatures and the duration of the extreme temperatures. I think they'll find that there's very little chance that this could have occurred without a human amplification. It's not as if the Pacific Northwest wouldn't have been under a heat ridge last week, maybe for a day or two, were we not roaming the planet. But because of the human activities, we're making things stronger, more extreme, and sometimes lasting longer, and sometimes occurring in unusual locations. So I'm quite confident we're going to find that there is a human factor not a be all and end all. That's
Right.
the tricky thing about weather and climate. We know how variable it is naturally, but it's this amplification. It's the climate on steroids, as one of your former professors would brought up in terms of this is Professor Tony Broccoli at Rutgers.
Yes.
He coined the idea that someone hits 70 home runs and they're on steroids. Which ones of those home runs wouldn't have been a home run?
Right.
Clearly, this is a power hitter.
Right.
But which ones made it over the fence because of the steroids as opposed to not being on them? And that's what, it's a rough analogy. It's kind of what we're looking at. One of my
it skews the curve of temperatures, right? Skews it warmer.
Yeah.
So
and
has a greater chance. Sure.
One of my former professors, Jim Hansen, Columbia University, brought and NASA brought to Congress in the late 80s. It was dice.
Mm-hmm.
And you roll the dice, and it's loaded dice. So you're going to roll snake eyes more often than not because you've loaded the dice.
Right.
That's kind of what we're doing with our climate system.
And I'm sorry, I'm breaking news for anybody listening to this on Wednesday. New Jersey's now in a tropical storm watch for Elsa. Just came across. So
not surprised.
Yeah. Now, some of you are probably going to listen to this after Elsa comes, so we won't go into any crazy predictions or anything. But tropical storm watch is in effect. I would imagine there's going to be a warning on sometime early Thursday for this. And I'm going to say overall, we had 2 tropical storms last year, so we're not we're accustomed to it. We'll see. It's going to go on, depend on the track of the low pressure system as it does. We want to stay on the western side of that because it looks like most of the rain and, of course, the wind are going to be on the east side of that. So we'll.
I mean, look at last summer. I mean, ECASIS was too strong. Faye in a couple areas of Southwest Jersey was a little too wet.
Yeah.
But ultimately, look at the National Drought Monitor. New England was in drought last summer.
Yeah.
New Jersey wasn't. And it's because of those 2 storms. And there are a couple others that brushed us with some rain. So these storms, if they are well behaved, can bring some beneficial rain to New Jersey for our groundwater, our reservoirs, our crops, our gardens. So let's hope this is a well-behaved couple of inches.
Yes.
In 12 hours. And we'll welcome that rain.
Yeah, hopefully so. We'll take the rain. And Isaias, we should say, on the coast, we didn't get a lot of rain from Isaias. We got less than a half inch. Most of the rain was on the west side of the storm, but we were on the east side where you see the strongest wind. So, these storms all act a little bit differently is my point. And, it looks like, thankfully, most of this, depending on if we're on the west side of the storm, we're not going to get the same wind or the same rain with this, but we will see, as we go forward. Let's take a break right here. Good time to break. We'll come back and it's all Jersey. The rest of the way, I promise. We'll talk about June. This is the Something in the Air podcast. All right, everyone, we're back. It's the Something in the Air podcast. We are recapping the month of June. We are here with New Jersey State climatologist and birthday buddy, May 13th birthday buddy, in case anybody's keeping score, Dr. Dave Robinson. So let's talk all about Jersey here because we talked about everything else in the first half. We were talking about your worldly experiences, but let's bring it back home. I think when I think of June, I think of the 2 heat waves that we had here in our corner of the state. I also think about just how awful Memorial Day weekend still was and how our weekends kind of recovered after that point, the all important short weekends. So let's start off with the temperatures. So we had our 2 heat waves. Did we wind up above average in the area? Did we wind up below average? And, could you put those heat waves in context for us?
Yeah, it was a real, I'm writing the narrative a little bit late for June. I'm calling it hit or miss. I'm thinking more for the month. I'm thinking more in terms of precipitation, which varied a lot locally. But even in terms of temperature, we were up, we were down, we were up, we were down. We had a 34-degree morning on the 17th up in Walpack, up in a valley in Northwest Jersey, 37. Yet we hit the century mark. the last day of the month in Jersey, at our station in Jersey City. So looking down your way, Atlantic City was a little bit, I think, 1.3 degrees above average. It's a little cooler along the coast. The marina only came in, I think, a half degree above and never hit 90.
No, we did not. We had a bunch of sea breezes kept rolling in each day, and it kept it cool.
That really helped. But statewide, and we're still, the National Centers for Environmental Information been very slow this month getting numbers out because of the holiday. But tentatively, the last values they put out yesterday, and the finals will be today, are ranking, I think it was 1.8 degrees above the 1991 to 2020 mean, 3 degrees above the last century's mean. It'll be tied for the 8th warmest June on record. So that last heat wave snuck up on us and popped us into the top 10. We had been running around 20th, 25th warmest before that. So, I'm not saying we're used to it, but some places of the state have already over a dozen days over 90 for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And the long-term averages in a lot of areas is in the upper teens.
Yeah.
So, and we've already hit some 90-degree days in July. So, these warm summers are becoming more and more normal.
Right.
And remember, in summer, we don't have a large range in temperature like we do in the winter, between months and between years in winters. It's kind of close. So if you're 2 degrees above normal, that's pretty impressive anomaly. And so if we're raising temperatures, we talked about in the first segment, by a degree or two to make all-time records out west or whatever, there was even more than a degree or two. That's enough to push you above 90 more often. That's enough to push you into the top 25% and occasionally into the top 10. Just those couple of degrees. And you may say, well, it's just a couple of degrees, but don't we all notice it in the summer? If it's 2 degrees above normal, 2 degrees below, you're going to have people say this was really a warm month, or boy, this was a pleasant change for a summer month. Mm-hmm. We don't get many of those pleasants any longer.
When was the last time we had a below average June?
That's was it recently? I have to look back at it, but we're lying. I think I looked of the top 16 because there's a tie for 15th. I looked at the top 16 June temperatures, and 7 of the top 16 have been since 2005, and we have records going back to 1895. That's where you have to put it in that context.
Yeah.
So half of the top 16 almost of the last 127 years have occurred in the last 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
So it's just going off the charts when it comes to that added warmth.
Right. Putting your finger on the climate scale is what's happening with, not every year, like you said, but overall, it's juicing up the atmosphere and juicing up our, land for potential for warmer temperatures. And, listen, if you're sitting in your air conditioning all day, you work in the air conditioning, maybe it's not the biggest impact on you, but if you're working outside, if you're going to be out in the heat, you don't want those 90-degree days, 15 times, 15 times a month, you would like to limit that as much as possible. And the overnight lows too, if you don't have air conditioning, and I was going to touch on that, if you don't have air conditioning, and some people don't, when you get nights over 70, it's usually not a dry 70, it's a humid 70. That's uncomfortable to sleep in.
Yeah. And that last heat wave in June, I think out of our 64 stations on 2 nights, almost about 60 of them stayed above 70, between 70 and 78. That cool station up in Walpack, they got down to 65 or 66. So, that last heat wave of the month was the one that had the excessively high temperatures, plus it had the humidity. I mean, High Point Monument, our station up there, hadn't hit 90 degrees since 2018. They got to 91. I guess it was on the 30th. They hadn't been to 91 since 2010. when it hit 95. 2010 was a real hot summer, people may remember. But that was the hottest temperature at the highest point in the state in 11 years was June 30th when it hit 91.
You know, it was interesting. Just, you know, you talk about the heat here. Atlantic City International Airport was 90 on June 28th, 93 on that second day, the 29th, and then 94 and 30th. Nowhere really in South Jersey actually broke daily high temperature records, but that wasn't the case in the northern half of the state. Any particular reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's wind flow. We have, if you get northwesterly winds, there's some what's called downsloping. It comes off the Poconos, it comes off the highlands, and that air compresses a little as it comes down. And that can give you warmer temperatures up in the north. One thing that maybe is involved is it was drier in June up north. The northern part of the state had an inch or two less rain than the southern half, which was a little below average, but closer to average. Mm-hmm. And the drier land heats up more readily. I'd say that would be a secondary effect. I think it was more the wind flow patterns on those days that warmed up the north a little more than the south.
Yeah, and to your point, you know, we had sea breezes working along the immediate shore. You know, Atlantic City Marina, a couple of those days where the airport was above 90, it wasn't even above 80 at the marina some of those days, and that was for both heat waves. So, you know, we did, you know, the sea breeze is your friend, but sometimes beach relief.
Well, and remember, it was still June. So, you know, that happens in late July, early August. You tack a couple more degrees onto Atlantic City Marina.
Right.
But still, we're warming up our ocean temperatures, which actually helped to air condition our coast a little bit more during the heat of June this year.
Yep. Gotcha. We'll turn over to rainfall now. Of course, it's summer, so it can be very varied from one place to the other. So I know you have to take some of this with a grain of salt, but just talk about the month of June, you know, as a whole in South Jersey. Wetter than average, drier, about the same.
It was drier than average overall, although not as much as up north, and not, you know, anywhere near top 20% or anything like that. But as I mentioned earlier, it's this hit or miss type of pattern that we often see. But oftentimes the hit or misses on different days of the month kind of average out. Yeah. But here it was, you got hit a couple times during the month or you missed a couple times, because every one of the counties we talk about, Atlantic County, for instance, looking at our CoCoRaHS observers, the wettest spot was Folsom at 6.08 inches. That's above normal by a couple of inches.
Sure.
The driest spot was Galloway at 3.28. So almost half of what Folsom got. But it's even more pronounced when you go down to Cape May, where Woodbine had 4.53 inches. But not too far away, Dennis Township only had 2.13. So there's more than a factor of two difference. Yeah, and then up in Ocean County, Stafford Township had 4.78, wettest spot in Ocean County. And Pine Beach, not that far away, 2.21. So again, more than a factor of two. So very, you know, as I said, sometimes those storms that hit or miss over the course of the month even out geographically. Yeah. Not in June. Where it wanted to rain, it rained. Where it didn't want to rain, it didn't rain.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, we're just working in Pleasantville. You know, we had days where thunderstorms were flaring up just around us, but, you know, you had nothing there. And you always get the question from, you know, people I work with, is it going to rain at my house at 7:00? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, there will be storms. If you told me, are there going to be storms in Atlantic County? I'd say, yes, of course. But it's just the nature of these thunderstorms, right? Anytime you get to thunderstorm season, unless it's aligned with a cold front, and even then it can sometimes be, you know, scattered, but it's just hard to pinpoint where these are going to be until they're already forming and moving. Then I could tell you. But, you know, people want their answers ahead of time. I understand that. It's something we in the weather modeling community, in the meteorology community, you know, I'm sure we'll get even better over time, but it's tough to tell you what's going to happen even 5 hours from now on a thunderstorm day.
Yeah, you're never going to get it perfectly. You know, up in central Jersey last night. I could see that line coming through, but there were little breaks in it. And I'm like, are we going to get the heaviest part or not? And I ended up with 1.43 inches, whereas someone else in my community, a half mile away, just to the north, had 1.21. He had 0.2 of an inch less. And he's within half a mile. But those storms, as you say, you can sometimes do nowcasting, see that line come through. But last night they kept reforming a little bit of training, not a classic training event. And what I thought might only be a quarter or half an inch of rain proved to be well over an inch when all was said and done. So, yeah, I mean, no knock on the meteorologic community at all. We just can't get to that kind of detail. And I think I agree with you. It's going to get better, but you're never going to be able to tell someone well in advance, cancel the picnic.
Yeah. You gotta say, listen, you don't want to do that. And I've gotten calls, shout out Ventnor Special Events. They've called me a couple of times. Hey, should we cancel? Should we cancel for this? And you just have to word it nicely. I mean, it's like one of those things where, like, if you can tolerate the risk for rain, keep it. If you can't, you have to cancel it, but you might cancel at the risk of it just being partly sunny, So challenges of weather. But let's go. I'm sorry.
No, it's summer in Jersey. Summer in Jersey.
That's it. Let's wrap it up. We have another minute here. Was there anything you wanted to touch upon for a couple of seconds that we missed out on? And if not, just tell us what's going on with the Climate Center and where we can find more information.
Yeah, well, we do have a new station that's almost all the way installed, Little Egg Harbor Township, going out through the salt marsh to the Rutgers Marine Science Center. We don't have the anemometer there yet. We have to get a lift to put it on the tower, but you can go online and find that station's temperature, humidity, precipitation. So it fills a nice gap between Atlantic City Marina Station and Harvey Cedars. And we're always looking to install more and even better equipment. This is real good equipment at this station along the coast. So I bring that to everyone's attention. Other than that, we're still, we're going to have to deal with a lightning strike out in Hopewell Township last night that fried the thermometer unit, but fortunately nothing else. So we have those things to deal with in the summer as we're mowing the grass around the stations. Sometimes our hosts do it. Sometimes we have to. We have to look out for the lightning threats. Never a dull moment. So njweather.org. If you want to look at the longer term climate side of things, njclimate.org.
All right.
And don't forget Kokoraz. Nothing better than Kokoraz during the summer with this hit or miss type of rain to fill in those holes that our electronic network of 64 stations can't do. We're getting 250 plus Kokoraz observations a day, which is just incredibly wonderful. And kudos to those listening who are Kokoraz contributors. To those who aren't, join us.
That's right. It's kokoraz.org, or if you just type in Martucci Robinson Kokoraz, you'll see an article about it. You can check that out too. I'm in Kokoraz timeout because I committed a Kokoraz foul, which we won't get into because it might put some shame on me as a meteorologist. But let's just say eventually it will be up and running.
You get a pass because you promote the network. So
okay, all right, good.
You got a free. Get out of jail.
I gotta get out of jail free card. All right, good. I have to move my rain gauge. That is the situation. But
a little too close to the building.
It's so close to the building. It's actually on the building. That's how close it is. And they caught it, and I knew it was bad. I knew my 100% hand up, my fault. But we are going to get that fixed.
It's so close to the building that my co-leader, Matt Gerbush, the assistant state climatologist, and I thought you were pranking us when you showed us a picture of
I know, and I feel bad because you probably thought so highly of me. And then you said, what is going on here? But
what did we teach you here?
I failed. I have failed, but I'm going to rectify the situation. It will be fixed. I have to get a timeline on that, though. All right, let's wrap it up. We are good here. Dr. Robinson, thanks for being here with us today. We're going to chat with you guys on the look at my calendar, 1st of July, we have Matt Lanza, who I think you know Matt Lanza, right?
Mhm.
Matt Lanza, South Jersey native, runs a website, kind of runs like a Press of Atlantic City weather thing, what I'm doing, but down in Houston. We're going to chat with him, and then we'll be back with you at the beginning of August. So take care, everybody. Stay safe, and we will chat with you guys soon.